a time long ago, when the just and enlightened monarch, Caliph Oman, ruled in Medina, there was a minstrel by the name of Tashleen. Tashleen was gifted with the most exquisite voice. His voice ranged from the highest to the lowest effortlessly. His songs made even the nightingales' hearts fill with envy. It called the birds out of their trees, the animals and creatures from their hiding places. And he could also play the harp like an angel. Now Tashleen lived, feasting on the adulation and the praise, and not only those two, but the largesse of all those who came to hear his song, never thinking about the future. But now Tashleen was in his twilight years. His voice had begun to rasp, and the fingers which strummed the harp strings were now gnarled and knotted. And he was poverty-stricken. He could not even pay the few dinars that allowed him to remain in the simple lodgings in which he dwelt. So he was evicted. He was on the street, wandering aimlessly. He would come to people who, when they came close to him, recognized him, but gave him just a very brief salam before they hurried on to listen to minstrels with lesser abilities but more passion than he. He stumbled down the street and found himself in the graveyard, the cemetery. Sitting down on a tombstone, he bewailed his fate, saying to Allah, "Allah, you gave me these wonderful gifts, and now you've taken them away from me. What am I to do?" He had his harp under his arm, but he could not even afford the strings to replace those which were broken. So he lay down on a tombstone, resting his head on his stringless harp, and thought, well, I am to die, so I better pray to Allah. But he'd never prayed before. All his life, all he knew was to make music, to allow his voice to range between the lowest and the highest trilling, and strumming his harp strings, giving out so that he could receive in return the praise, the adulation, and the largesse. He knew nothing else. How does one pray? But as he lay there, a great sob rose up in his throat, and he cried out to Allah, "Allah, you gave me this gift, and you have taken it away, but never have I acknowledged this gift. If you let me have this, if you give me back my gift, I promise I will sing and play only for you. And then his soul rose up out of his body, and he found himself in that place where the music that comes from the hands of man and the songs that come from the throats have no sound. Only the celestial sounds filled Taslin's soul, and he was uplifted in ways that he had never imagined were possible. Even hearing himself on his most wonderful days, his soul was transported and filled with bliss. He didn't want to leave this place, basking in it. All around and through him, the soundless sound, the sound beyond sounds, was music such as he'd never heard. But then he heard a voice. It said, "You cannot remain here. You must return from whence you came." No, his soul cried, no, this is where I belong. And as Taslin's soul was filled and basked in the wonder, Caliph Oman, sitting on his throne, suddenly had a feeling of great fatigue. And he knew that this was a calling from the divine. So he allowed his eyes to close. And as he wafted off into what seemed to be a sleep, but we know otherwise, a voice came to him and said, "Go to your coffers, take 700 dinars to a beloved of mine who rests in the cemetery." Caliph Oman came out of that state and immediately went to his treasure house and took out the 700 dinars and hastened to the cemetery, looking for the beloved of Allah. But when he entered the cemetery and looked around, all he saw was a ragged old hermit lying on a grave. Surely this wasn't a beloved of Allah. He circumnavigated the cemetery several times, and then, he thought to himself, "Omar, have you not learned your lesson yet?" And he immediately went over and knelt by the ragged figure of Taslin lying on the gravestone. Patiently he waited there, but then something tickled his nose, and he went, "Choo!" bringing back Taslin from that place. Taslin sat up with great surprise, and seeing the Caliph said, "Please, please, don't take me off to the prison. I have no money." With great compassion, Caliph Oman said, rest easy. Here is 700 dinars to restring your harp. For a moment, Tashlin returned to the old state. Oh, largesse, thank you. And then he remembered, and he began to weep. No, I am the most unworthy of souls. For all of these years, my ego has ruled. Never have I given acknowledgement to the divine for what I've been given. Never have I sung or played for Allah. I did so, or only for my own rewards. And taking his harp, he smashed it over his thigh and threw it. Caliph Oman said, "Stop this whinging and whining. It is the ego that continues to repent endlessly. It is the ego that says was, is, or will be. I have been sent by Allah Himself with this gift to restring your harp. The harp and your gift was given by Him and Him alone. Take your harp and play." And with that, Caliph Oman and Tashlin's eyes met. And in that meeting, Tashlin felt himself transported into a state of oneness and wholeness. In the moment that followed, Tashlin bowed to the Caliph Oman, thanking him for opening his heart. Caliph Oman took his leave, and the minstrel Tashlin went straight to the marketplace, where he bought himself a new harp and strings with which to string it. And then he took himself off. Tashlin went into silence, and in that silence he played his harp and sang his songs, which can still be heard and are beyond the words that this story can any further describe. There's no need to ask us what this story means for us, nor to ask you what its deep meaning is, because all of us, each of us, in our own way, have lived this story. Have you purchased and strung your harp? Are you resting in that silence and allowing the music, the gift of life that's been given to you to play and sing in your own unique way? The answer has to be yes. Otherwise we would not be sitting here.